YouTube, what's up? It's Jacob. Welcome to 911%. Welcome to the first video of my brake service DIY series on my 1997 Porsche Carrera 4S. This is an in-depth coverage of my experience with a brake job. So in the first part, we're going to be covering full teardown. The second video is going to cover a caliper refresh, and the third video is going to cover the reassembly, brake bleed, and pretty much getting the car back on the road. So if you're interested in the backstory of this brake job, definitely check out, I believe it's episode number 25 in the 911% episodes list. All right, guys, so without further ado, let's talk about the parts list and the tool list. So here are all the parts I acquired for the service. I listed them in the description below, but basically I'm using all Porsche genuine parts, excluding the copper and silver anti-seize, and I'm also running ATE SL.4 brake fluid. Guys, I'm ranking this a 4 out of 10 on the difficulty scale for this DIY, and just to give put into perspective for you guys, a 1 out of 10 would be like taking your wheels off, and a 10 out of 10 would be splitting the engine case for a bottom end rebuild. Okay, so first up, we're gonna lift the car, and you can easily do this with a set of jack stands. I'm using my Direct Lift Pro MR6 mid-rise lift to speed things along a little bit. So remove the wheels, obviously, to expose the brake components. Duh. There's no trick on where to begin. I'm starting with the front brakes and then moving to the rear. All right, so now that everything's exposed here in the front wheel, we're gonna need to remove these brake pad sensors. And the way to do that, we're just going to unravel it here from the top, and then I'm gonna use some needle nose pliers to release this caliper spring. As soon as you have this out, you can easily remove the sensor, and it's basically plugged into both pads on both sides of the rotor. So you just have to either wiggle them out by hand or again use these needle nose pliers. I use needle nose pliers just for speed, and because I'm putting in new sensors, so I'm not really too concerned about the state of these ones. Okay, so moving on, now I'll be removing the brake line that attaches to the caliper right here. To do this, I'll be using an 11mm flare nut wrench and carefully unscrew it. And as soon as this line is removed, brake fluid will flow. So I'm prepared with a drip pan as well as some rubber plugs that you can cap the line off immediately. Alright, so now that the brake fluid is detached and the line is capped, I can get started on removing the caliper. I'm going to use some C-clamps to compress these pads out a little bit, just so that they clear and they can clear the rotor. So this is probably going to push a little bit of the fluid out from the hole on the caliper there, so it might get messy. But again, I've got the drip pan and a little jar there to catch any overflow. Let's do it. So basically I'm using these C-clamp things that I have to compress the calipers. So let me try to do this with one hand. So with a 10mm hex bit, remove these bolts that hold the caliper to the knuckle. Alright guys, so now we're ready to take the caliper off. Now I'm going to remove the rotor, and these are held on by Phillips head fasteners that need to be removed before the rotor will come loose. Alright, so sweet, everything's removed on this side. I'm just double checking that the brake line stopper works and nothing is dripping. The brake fluid is bad news for any painted surfaces, so the cleaner you could work, definitely the better. Everything looks totally awesome, so now I'm going to do the other side quickly and then move on to the rear calipers. So now that the two fronts have been disassembled, I'm moving on to the rear. Again, same process. In theory, we'll remove the brake pad wear sensors and the retaining clip. Now I'll move to the brake line. So this is a different setup versus the front calipers, which we just saw. Basically, all I'm doing here is cracking the bolt and loosening the brake line fitting using a 14mm flare nut wrench. And once I unbolt the caliper from the knuckle, I'll spin the caliper to unthread the brake line. I'll show you guys what I mean. It sounds crazy, but I'll show you guys what I mean in a minute. So unbolting the rear calipers, again, is a bit different from the front. You will use a 16mm socket wrench to unbolt the calipers from the knuckle, and they are in a little bit of a different spot. Sorry I couldn't get the camera in there properly, but if you peek behind there, it's pretty straightforward. Now onto the rotor, so make sure the parking brake is down. This is key or the rotor will not come loose. Remove these screws holding the rotor on the hub. Okay, so regardless of putting the parking brake down, the rotors would not come free pretty easily, so I ended up using a screwdriver to pry the rotors off the hub. So pretty much the same process for the other side. So the last thing to do is just to give everything a thorough soaking in brake cleaner. Basically, I just ended up using tons and many cans of it just to spray down everything. So it's gonna be all nice and fresh for the reinstall. So as I mentioned already, in the next video, I'm going to be doing a caliper refresh. The one after that, I'm going to be doing a reassembly and putting the car back on the road. So make sure you stay tuned for those videos, and I hope you guys found this enjoyable and informative. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like, and I'll see you guys definitely on Thursdays and on a random Monday for some DIYs. All right, guys, take care.